This is Stephanie Stock, President of Ohio Advocates for Medical Freedom, an advocate for conservative policy and the protection of our constitutional liberties. Welcome to Stephanie Stock Straight Up. Today we're with Representative Gross, one of our joint sponsors for our newest piece of legislation, the Data Center Accountability and Citizen Protection Act, which we will be getting a bill number for today. Yay! Thank you so much for joining us, Rep. Gross, to discuss the provisions of this bill, why it's so vital to pass for Ohioans. Maybe you can just give a quick introduction of yourself in case anybody doesn't know you. Most people probably do in the medical freedom community, but for the newbies out there on the data center issue, maybe give a little rundown of who you are and how long you've been around and how awesome you are.
Thank you, Stephanie. You're kind. It's really an honor to be on your podcast. This is my first visit, and I really appreciate you inviting me on today. A little bit about me. I am a combat veteran, retired Air Force, combat lieutenant colonel, swore to uphold the Constitution of Ohio and the Constitution of the United States. In the military, we say against enemies, both foreign and domestic, and so I never rescinded that part of my oath. I've always taken it very seriously in the last 6 years in the legislature to hear my constituents to the best of my ability, not always perfect, but to hear them listen. And that is why I'm here with you today to support the majority of Ohioans who want us to rein in responsible data center progress and rein it in for their health and their interests so that they can partner with those who are making these big decisions. And so I'm happy to be here, and thank you for your invitation today.
Good. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think this has become a really huge issue. It's been really growing over the past year or so. I think we all know somebody in an area who is having a battle with a lot of times their own local government because they're not being heard by their local government. We have the situation with the NDAs. There's just been a lot. Everybody's been upset about all of these tax abatements. And so I think it's really driven this issue to the front, really on even elections. I think this is going to be a big election issue this year. Do you kind of agree with that?
I do, because what I'm hearing in the district is that people are concerned, whether it's rightful fear or it's propagated. People are concerned. And when you're a representative, it's our responsibility to be sure that we're listening and that we do our due diligence, especially when we're talking about things like NDAs, energy prices, water quality, and water pollution, noise pollution. Those are things that we need to look for generations to come.
Yep, I agree completely. All right, I'd like to get into the provisions of the bill, and then we can maybe deep dive a little bit and give some people some examples of kind of how that plays out. I'm going to go over basically the top bullet points of the bill, and I think the first most important thing that voters are going to be excited about, especially all these ones that are in different areas. They're either trying to do a moratorium or they're in a battle with a zoning issue and they're not being heard because unfortunately a lot of the data centers are wooing the local government officials or maybe saying, hey, we're going to give you money for this if you give us this permit. And the citizens are getting bypassed. So one of the most important provisions of this bill, I think, and I think you probably agree with, is that it does require a citizen vote at the local level. So any village, city, or township that's located within a 5-mile radius of the proposed facility, it has to go on the ballot. Just like a levy or any other measure that's local that's going to affect the whole community. This way, we're making sure that we don't have the local government bypassing the citizens. The local government can still say no to zoning permits.
And they still, as elected officials, have the right to say yes or no. But it's also the joint voice, right, between the community and the local officials. And I think that leads really reasonably into the NDAs, which are a big concern that I'm hearing about. Non-disclosure agreements seem to be secretive, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you are not allowed to disclose, then why? What are we hiding from the community? And that's something else that maybe you'll want to talk a little bit more to, but the NDAs are a big deal to people that I've spoken to, and Ohioans. They want transparency.
They absolutely do. That has been one thing that I've heard from people all around the state because they come to me and say, Stephanie, I'm having this issue, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm hearing this. It's everywhere. It's not just a few places. It's a lot of different communities that are experiencing this. So in this bill, we are we are prohibiting all NDAs regarding data center. The communications between the elected officials, because it does need to be transparent, right?
That's right.
If these data centers are doing a great thing for the community, and that's what's being said to a lot of people, and that's fine, then there's nothing to hide,
I
right? There's nothing to hide.
I also think Ohioans in general expect transparency from their
Mhm.
elected office holders. And I find it fascinating that now it's kind of contingent on the voter to come back to their elected and say, hey, what are you doing behind my back? Whoa, wait a minute. They didn't vote for people to hold secrets. They voted for people to represent them appropriately. And it's a little sus. I'm just going to say it's a
It
lot
is.
sus.
And there's actually local government officials that are concerned because they don't like that they're not allowed to disclose. They want to, but they know they'll be in trouble if they do. So there is also a little line in the bill that says there is not going to be there is total protection for any, city council member or any local elected official for telling the citizens what they need to know, that there's not going to be a penalty for that, because again, the NDAs are gone. Once this bill passes, no future NDAs and previous NDAs are gone as well. So everything can be public records requested, and that is how it should be, because this is their community. It affects their community and their lives. So
It's a
should
really
be.
vital point in this bill.
The next biggest issues for voters is, well, for citizens in general, whether they vote or they don't, and that is the emissions, the discharge water. One, the water usage. Big issue for people. How much water are they using? Because everybody's saying, oh, the new data centers, new technology, they can do closed loop. They can do closed loop, but they're not required to do closed loop. So unless they're required to use the best available technology for using the least amount of water, they're going to do whatever's most cost effective for them. They're not going to worry about us. So this bill does require any new voter approved data centers to operate with a closed loop system. So they're going to use the least amount of water possible. And it also is going to require the EPA to set emissions for wastewater safety standards for all of the currently non-regulated chemicals that are in the discharge water, right? We have unregulated metals, glycols, organics like PFAS, forever chemicals. Those do end up in the discharge water, and there are millions and millions of gallons released every year into either the local water municipality, which we're drinking because they aren't filtering that either, or they're going into our rivers, lakes, and streams if they're being permitted by the EPA. So those are very big issues for voters. They want to know they're going to be drinking clean water. They want to know that our fish aren't swimming in PFAS, and we're not or we're not draining our aquifers or whatever. Those things are really important. So both of those provisions are included in the bill, and I think if this bill passes, Ohio will be the first state in the nation to set, I believe, standards for forever chemicals, for PFAS, and some of these other things in data centers, to pave the way to show this is how we should be doing it, right? Because if you want to have expansion and you want to grow business, is great. But we don't do it on the backs of the taxpayers, either through harming them through their health or having them pick up the tab later when there are requirements for those things to be filtered. And then the city's got to build the filtration systems,
That's
right?
That's
And
right.
that's
Well,
coming. The EPA is going to have PFAS regulations set, I believe, in 2029, with like a year or something for if they need to do an expansion until 2030 or whatever. But the local water municipalities are going to have to start filtering that, which means they got to build all new stuff to filter that, and then they've got to take all the data centers discharge water. It's just really wrong.
the fact of the matter is, as a representative, it's my responsibility to think about generations to come. Water quality, you can have all this data. We're not anti-data in this bill. We know that data is important for life. It's important for business. It's important. We are pro-business in this bill. The challenge is that you can have a lot of data, but if you cannot survive without water quality and good quality water. If we are poisoning our water, not only will that water be released, as is the case through this huge world, the biggest in the world data center that's supposed to go in Pike County, Ohio. If that water is placed through the Scioto River and into the Ohio River, we are poisoning fish. That's food. And so we're 65% water as humans. And then if we go on and have our fish, as you were saying, swimming in PFAS, that is going to be poisoning our food supply as well. I think that it's our responsibility as state legislators and those who are making the laws in our state to protect Ohioans' lives, and being in that arena is so important to understand that to be um, to be pro data is not to be also then anti-environment. You can be pro-environment and pro-data, and that's all I wanted to say about that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's a challenge. I think in our state, we have a state that's very business oriented, which is great. We like businesses, but we cannot sacrifice the future of humanity for business. We have to balance that and make sure that we are taking care of the people. Without people, you don't have businesses. So there's that.
And
Um,
I can't speak for Vivek Ramaswamy, but I will say that I do understand and believe that he has said that responsible rollout of data centers is what we're looking for. And I think this is a responsible point. Let's make sure that we protect our resources as we expand data centers.
Yeah, exactly. And for the water provision, also, we are requiring all future data centers are going to have a on-site water filtrate or on-site water treatment plant, whatever that is. It could be small, it could be one room, right? Because if it's a closed loop data center, they're only going to empty when they're doing repairs, and maybe every several years, they're going to have to get rid of that water. So it'll be whatever they need to clean their own mess, right? And then for all the existing data centers, they'll be required to be compliant with a water treatment facility within 18 months, which, hey, but we can't complain, right? That creates jobs. So we shouldn't have any complaints on that. And then it also makes sure that the guys that have been polluting, some of them for up to 10 years, right? Because I think we had the first data center here in 2015, and this has been unregulated all this time. So all those years of polluting, it's time for them to take responsibility and build those systems up so that whatever water they return to the municipality, the local municipality, or rivers, lakes, and streams is at least as good or better than when they found it.
Yeah, yeah, we don't even know now. I'm seeing a lot of people with cancer. We don't know if some of the people in Ohio that are developing random cancer,
Yeah.
if that's not from polluted water. And we've got to do everything we can to protect that. So, yeah. So, what's the next point? The one I'd like to bring out is actually no property tax abatements.
Oh
So,
yeah,
as
that's
a person who has been, and people always come, remember, property tax stay local, property tax stay local. So, but property tax are paid for on the backs of homeowners, and we are disproportionately dependent on property tax for the homeowner on the homeowners. This does not allow property tax abatements, and that's a big issue for the taxpayer and the homeowner, and I like that.
it is absolutely. And again, other than data centers, the next biggest issue in the state is property taxes, right? So I mean, we have people paying exorbitantly high property taxes, and then they have property tax abatements for the giant data center up the street. And voters, frankly, they're pissed.
That's
I
right.
mean,
That's
I
right.
would be. They were trying to put a data center, here in Norton, and we're looking at our property taxes, going, you got to be kidding me with this. You're the voter is taking on all the costs, and the data center is getting all the benefits, and it's not like they're hurting for income. So so yeah, I think that's going to be a very big selling point with this bill, and it's right. It's the right thing to do. They do need to pay their fair share of property taxes, especially if they're going to be taking up that much space. That is a lot of property. So they need to pay their own way, and I think paying your own way is definitely a theme among Republicans, that they do get behind that. Everybody, I mean, both sides of the aisle, really, they all think these guys need to be paying their own way, and that is part of it. Um, Now, going back to the water regulations and also the emissions, because you do have a situation with emissions, you can get Legionella, different things from the biocides they use, depending on it, if they don't use quite the right amount. That stuff can get airborne if they're using an open loop system. So we do have we with the EPA will be setting rules to address that for standards, and those emission standards, both for water and air, they will require compliance with all the existing data centers also within 18 months. So it's important that these guys are monitored.
And so, Stephanie, my understanding also, and one thing I'm excited about in the bill is that if once this bill is placed, that should the data centers go off the rails and go against our law, that we have a penalty portion of this bill that allows the local township, city, or municipality to come back and recoup damages from the data center if they go against the law. Would you like to talk a little bit more about that to our audience?
Sure. So there's kind of two parts to that, actually. There is a section that discusses if the data center creates an issue with water pressure or the amount of water, like if they're using too much. This is for currently operating data centers, that those data centers will be required to pick up the tab for, let's say, building a water tower or doing something else to make sure that everybody's water pressure is where it needs to be and that they have a sufficient amount of water. So, and those costs will fall on the data center, not the local municipality, because right now, if there's an issue, the taxpayers are dealing with it and the city's going to have to build a water tower or do whatever to get that back up where it needs to be. So that's one piece of that. And then the second piece of that is the actual penalties from the state. And that is if they violate the emission standards for water safety, for discharge, and air emissions. The EPA will then, there's a fining system there. The EPA will collect those fines. And the cool part about this bill is those fines are going to get paid to the local community that's affected.
That's right.
So every day they're out of compliance up to 30 days. And then at 30 days, they have possibility of having their license taken away at that point. But the locals get the money, which is important.
Very important. Thank you so much for explaining that.
Yep.
So I was wondering, Stephanie, shall we talk to the people listening about energy generation and the fact that this bill makes it such that the energy is not tapped into in the community? They have to bring their own energy generation.
Right. Yeah. So that is a super important part of the bill. All of the new data centers, all the new approved data centers going forward, they are required in this bill to have their own associated power generating facility. So they will have to operate 100% off the grid. They will not be able to tap into and increase our energy rates or anything like that. They're going to have to be completely self-sufficient, which I think everybody, again, that's another thing that everyone agrees they should be handling all of their own energy. And that's the best way to do it, is just to not have them tapped in at all. So I think it's going to be.
That's right. And I mean, if they produce extra energy, perhaps they can, somehow help the community with that. That's really a great plan. I love it. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Are you hearing, I know we've kind of been teasing people about this bill for few weeks now. Have you heard from anybody in your district or even outside of your district, people kind of asking questions about the legislation or anything that we might be able to take a deeper dive for people if they're curious?
I think one of the main important things are NDAs and then also property tax abatements. I think that's really important, as you had said earlier in our discussion. I think people in general are largely unaware of what the data centers are doing, and they're secretly, probably because of NDAs, they're coming out, and we've had these for 10 years now. We didn't know what they were putting in the water. To your point, they started in 2015 and we're just now learning about this 10 years later. I think that people are becoming more and more aware, and they're awakening to the challenges, and everybody loves data in general. They love the data, and so they don't want us to stop their data, but then they learn, oh, there might be a price. Can you tell me more about that? And so I think the awareness is growing, and I think that as this bill progresses, the people will be more involved in what they're seeing.
I agree. And I think that this bill is really long overdue. I think the reason that we are seeing so much in the referendum for banning the 25 megawatts and over, like, I understand. I get it. When you are not heard by your government, you take matters into your own hands. We've seen that with initiatives many times. I mean, you and I, HB 248 is a perfect example. We've had bills in the past, medical freedom, like if the legislature's not getting it done and they're not addressing the serious concerns of the constituency, then they start taking matters into their own hands. So if we want to do the data center thing, that's fine, but we need to do it right. Because if we don't do it right, the citizens are going to make sure we don't do it at all. So if the real concern here is we want to responsibly move forward, we want Ohio to be open for business, I think the only way that's going to happen is if we pass serious water protections and the things that are in this bill, because that's what citizens want. If they can't get what they want, they're going to find a way to get it.
That's right. And we have one more thing that we haven't talked about, and that has to do with prohibiting anyone who participated in drafting revisions to the Power Siting Board Commission rules or public utilities rules from representing data centers for 3 years after that. Did you want to adjust that at all?
Yeah, so I did hear from a lot of people out in different areas of Ohio saying they're dealing with, they've got now a lawyer or somebody representing a data center that was recently involved with like the regulatory and the zoning components, and it's a little bit shady. So we wanted to kind of put something in there for that revolving door issue. I think that also gives people confidence if they feel like they're not having things hidden with NDAs, if they feel like there aren't revolving doors, and that there's a really open dialogue, and that people are being honest about what the data center is going to do, what they can provide. I think they're going to be more open to being in that conversation versus if they don't feel like they have any say and they're being bypassed, they're just going to be like, well, forget it. We're just going to get rid of all of these things. That's just, it's human nature. If you push someone out of the process, they're going to find a way to make sure that they have a say. And so I think that's just it's not a big part of the bill, but it's a little perk to the bill that I think will be appreciated, especially by the locals. So one of the things that kind of everybody's talking about is sort of the both sides of this issue, right? We have the one side that's kind of like build as many of these things as we can, build them in everybody's backyard, and then we have the side that says let's just ban them all together. I think this bill's a good balance. I don't know what do you think about where this bill falls into the scheme of things regarding kind of appeasing both sides here?
I really believe it's responsible government. Certainly will work the bill along the process. Everybody says we need to follow the process, but that balance between doing nothing in the environment, doing nothing to protect energy prices, doing nothing about NDAs, doing nothing about property tax abatements, and then a complete moratorium, this bill meets right in the middle, and certainly we're open for discussion on the bill.
Yeah, I agree. And I know Amy Acton just came out with kind of her stance. She was saying a moratorium based on certain things, but I really think that the best way forward is if the citizens have a say. If they want to have essentially their vote is a moratorium, right? So it should be an area by area. The locals should be making that decision. And I think that's why the vote is such an important thing rather than top down, whether the governor just does a straight ban or a straight moratorium. Like that takes away more power from the citizens. There may not be a lot of citizens that want it in their backyard, but some might. They might offer a great benefit to them. So it really needs to be the voter's choice. And this bill gives them that. So I do think it's going to be.
That's right. And as people awaken and become more knowledgeable about data centers and what's happening, they will realize the benefits of this bill, and I believe they'll appreciate what we have placed in this bill that enhances their ability to have their voices heard.
Exactly. And to the other side, those that were kind of like, let's just build a million of them, maybe they don't even realize the pollutant side of things. They may actually come to the middle. I think we can all kind of come to the middle on this of moving forward responsibly, having a voice and taking care of our environment, because, that's not just conservatives have the same principle. Democrats, there's no sides of the aisle on our water and our lands. We're Ohioans, and we all care. We all care about where we live and what we eat and what we drink and what our kids are going to eat and drink in the future. So.
Yeah, 100% agree. My joint sponsor, Michelle Teska, Representative Teska, and I, we really appreciate your work on this bill and just all that you've done. And I really want to be really, really clear that I understand that Ohioans expect transparency. That is something that I, for 6 years, soon to be into my last term in the Ohio House of Representatives, District 45, it's really vital that Ohioans know that someone is fighting for them. And that is what we are trying to do here, to make sure that the people of Ohio feel heard and that they have a voice when it comes to something that is going to demonstrably be the largest data center in the world in Ohio. We are the epicenter of that. We're not against being a data producer, but we do need to do it responsibly. And I love this bill, and that's what this bill is about. It isn't to cause trouble with other people or to be a nook in people's craw or anything like that. It is to help the people of Ohio and be responsible as we progress into the next decades and beyond for Ohio.
Yep, I agree, and I think it's going to be a very well-loved bill by the by the citizens. I think it's going to be refreshing legislation. It really is. It's people's legislation, and I
That's right.
mean that's what OAMF has a history of. We are, I
Oh,
mean,
indeed.
data centers weren't on my forefront, but when I kept having people come to me, and I thought, this is a health issue. Our water is a health issue, and it's we don't have medical freedom if we're having chemicals forced on us in our water. So I thought, well, guess we're going to expand.
That's
so
right. That's right.
but it's an
That's right.
important issue, and I'm glad we're addressing it. And I'm so thankful that you and Rep Teska have stepped up to the challenge. You girls are tough, so I think you're going to be great to carry this bill, because I know it'll be a little bit of a heavy lift with some of the pushback, but the citizens are going to love it. And so we're going to need all of you guys out there. If you love this bill, you need to tell your rep you love this bill and that you want them to commit to voting for it. And also we're going to, it's, leadership's always an issue. So we're going to need to make sure that Matt Huffman knows that this legislation is wanted, and also Senate President McCauley. So that's going to be all you citizens out there are going to have to get out there and climb up some
We hope to
legislator
have
butts.
a bill number soon, right? We hope to
Yes, the bill number, we'll have it today. Your aide actually said, Nathan, thank you for all your help. Your aide actually said that we should have a bill number hopefully around 2 o'clock. So we'll be able to get that out, and people can start chanting for this bill. I think we're in the 800s, Jen, somewhere. It's going to be 800 and something.
Probably. So
Uh,
thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on today. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out to Representative Gross or myself on either Facebook, or you can email info at Ohio.
Don't reach out to me on Facebook. Please reach out at rep45 at ohiohouse.gov, rep45 at ohiohouse.gov. If you write me on Facebook, you will not hear from me.
Okay. Now, you can write me on Facebook. You'll hear from me on Facebook, or you can also drop the question in the comments section of this, and then I can pass that on to Rep Gross too, and that can be something that we can address. So either way, we'll make sure that we get your questions answered. And thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you again, Rep Gross, and thank you, Rep Teska. I know you'll be watching this at some point. Thank you to all the people at LSC. We had a huge team at LSC trying to work on getting all of these last changes made, so we can make sure that we are putting forward a really solid piece of legislation, which I think we have here. So thank you so much. Have a great day.